I think it's very difficult for a brand new artist to live out of market. So let's say you are living in Kansas or somewhere, no offense to Kansas, but and you haven't yet started either building your training, building your community, building casting connections, building work, building a body of work. I think that person, it's harder for them to break into either New York or Atlanta or even LA if they're living there and they have emerged.
Welcome to Get Seen Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We are going to dive into acting insights, meet industry pros, and master the business. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're keeping you behind the scenes and ahead of the game. What is going on? Welcome to Get Seen Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. I'm so grateful that you are here. Get ready for a very powerful, incredible episode. But before we dive in, take a moment, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And please, as you are here enjoying this episode, if you're feeling compelled to leave us a review or a comment, please do that. I love reading those reviews and seeing those comments and seeing how this show, Get Seen Unscripted, is impacting your journey in a positive way. Thanks again for being here. Let's dive in with a talent agent, everyone, Miss Paige Chambers-Rucci. How are you?
Jesse, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you today.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to talk to you because you have your main branch in New York, and you've, over the last 6 years, right, have been now here in the Southeast as well. How has that been, diving into both markets? Because, you know, they're close to one another, but I think different at the same time. So how have you been balancing them and kind of enjoying that process of expanding?
Jesse, thank you. So my career as an actor was in New York. Very grateful to have that for almost 2 decades. And started going to New York when I was 8 years old to train. And so my heart and kind of my roots were there in New York. And my connections were there in New York. My community was there. So that seemed to be a natural kind of progression to kind of open the New York office. But I'm from Atlanta. I'm from North Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta in a small town. Now it's larger, but called Lawrenceville.
Yeah.
And so just kind of grew up around that small town community feel. And the reason that I went to New York was because my main goal was to do musicals and musical theater. So opening in Atlanta has been really interesting to see the differences in the markets. And not that we can generalize, but I think Atlanta does have a very strong theater scene. I think it's more rooted in film, television there, I would say. And then just the procedurals in New York, it's very different. You have those worlds. Of course, you have off-Broadway, and you have experimental theater, and you have Broadway, you have plays, you have musicals. But you also have a lot of dance. And so that's a big part of my background. So, you know, well-known companies to, you know, again, startup concert companies. And so the worlds are very different, but I think artists today really expand a lot. They have not just one track maybe that they want to accomplish or that is in their heart or what they want to do.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, both markets offer a lot of differences, and people, I think, should go to where they feel kind of rooted in and kind of where they feel, you know, they're going to be successful and work.
I feel like there's so many elements to that, and like go where it's like in Atlanta. I mean, although it's getting more expensive, but you know, you can have you know, you won't be living in a closet like you would be in New York. I remember New York. You know, so like your lifestyle maybe could be a little bit better. But you know, with everything going online and stuff, you know, is there a way that you have seen actors really be able to juggle both markets? Because when you're like, go where you think you feel led, I'm like, I bet you most of our listeners right now are like, I'd really like to do both, you know? So how have you seen actors been able to like juggle that?
Jesse, great points. I think lifestyle is definitely a component because the actors living in LA, you've got, you know, sunshine and you've got that element. You still have a financial component that's high. Yeah. New York, obviously high and high capacity housing and just a lot of people. You can be a little bit more around grass, I think, and things here. So yeah, in Atlanta, you have a different lifestyle. What's really, I think, interesting about being on the East Coast and us especially having an office in New York and an office in Atlanta, we can service both markets. So our head of film and TV, Katie Lynch, she's a phenomenal agent, phenomenal human. She's there. We have another agent full-time in New York. So we have, just that basis there covering all of our New York clients. But a lot of our New York clients do come to Atlanta and they do come in. Some of them can be local, some of them cannot. I think it depends on, where you are in your career and what choice you choose to make there. But I think that being mobile today and with the taping options, casting, is seeing more and more people than they ever have as far as the options there. My caveat to that is I think it's very difficult for a brand new artist to live out of market. So let's say you are living in Kansas or somewhere, no offense to Kansas, but and you haven't yet started either building your training, building your community, building casting connections, building work, building a body of work. I think that person, it's harder for them to break into either New York or Atlanta or even LA if they're living there and they have emerged. I feel like if you have the solid body of work, you've built connections, offices have known you for 20 years and you're living out of market, it's a little bit, I don't want to say easier because it's a tough business, but a little bit less obstacles.
Makes it a little more possible.
Yeah, a little bit more possible. It's going to be interesting to see though with, the SAG travel waiver and kind of how this all unfolds in the next coming weeks and months to see how that will affect, Southeast actors, New York actors possibly coming in, Atlanta actors living that have built this solid career in Atlanta for decades. And then new actors may be coming to Atlanta thinking, hey, how open is this market? But the thing I think to go back to is that, casting is always looking for new faces, especially on these long-running shows where we've seen 20 seasons. They are always like, wow, here's someone new that hasn't been in this world yet, hasn't been in this universe yet. So I think those are just a few things to, consider as you really contemplate, where should you be based at? I think all those factors, your family, maybe your life, maybe you have a partner, maybe you have children. There's a lot of factors that go into it just besides, hey, these are my goals. This is where I should live.
Hey actors, let me grab your attention for a quick moment because our incredible 3-day event is coming up. This is one of my favorite events of the entire year, the Southeast Actor Summit. And you probably already know that Atlanta is the heart of the Southeast, but the entire Southeast market really is one of the best markets that you could be diving into. And if you're not already working in this market, you probably should. There's so many opportunities. And so this is a great way to dive in. We bring in some of the best instructors here in Atlanta to help guide you and move you forward in your craft, while also including different agents and casting directors so you can truly get that behind the scenes peek at how to move your journey and your career forward. So I really hope you'll join us. There's more information in the description, so check that out. But if you truly want to not only work in the Southeast, but thrive here in the Southeast, this is a must-attend event, period. So I hope to see you there, the Southeast Actor Summit. Yeah, and I love, by the way, and to bring it back to just like you and your story. I mean, it's so cool because you've been on Broadway as an actor. You even worked for the United Nations, which is just like a whole jump in a completely different direction, and now owning your own agency. How did all that kind of happen and correlate?
Oh, Jesse, thank you. I feel very, very grateful that I grew up in an art-centered family. Mm-hmm. So my grandfather was a jazz pianist, and there were always music playing, and I grew up with like 1920s, 30s, 40s, all the musicals, the movie musicals. And my mom really was a visionary. She had a performing arts school that really did everything. So I was so lucky to be exposed to, accent training and Shakespeare's, plus hip hop, plus point, plus musical theater, plus Fosse, plus rhythm tap, plus vocal training. And she mounted these huge shows with, she was a nonprofit, 501c3, so she gave a lot back to the community. But that exposure and just living a life filled with arts really gave me like this unbridled passion. And her support and my family's support, my teacher's support, really, really drove me to go, okay, maybe I could do this. Maybe this is a possibility. You know, I grew up before the internet. I grew up before social media. You don't know when you're training in your own kind of world. And then when you go to somewhere large like New York and you see yourself in the room with all the other kids, then you start going, okay, wow, this is what the industry is as a pro. And so long story short, I did a lot of training as a kid, but just loved it. Even the 20 hours a week didn't seem like enough to me. I realize that's an extreme personality. That's not a path everyone needs to take or should, but I got a very lucky break early, and Susan Stroman hired me for Crazy for You. And so it was my very first audition.
Whoa.
Yes. So it still seems unbelievable,
Dang.
like 30 years later. So again, an outlier story that's not necessarily, the path that people go on, but getting that very early break, I left high school, graduated via correspondence, and was just immersed into this incredible world. I'm seeing a female director. I'm seeing, female choreographer. And apologies, her husband directed the show. He passed away, but she became a Tony-winning director and Tony-winning choreographer, and one of the greatest, I think, of all time. So to be immersed in that world, I don't take it for granted a second to this day. So that was just kind of the emergence of, I've really kept my heart in musicals. And so that was really where I felt the happiest, and just got to work with just incredible people. And all of those people, and especially my agents, I have to say, that would not have been possible without them.
The agent giving the agents credit. Interesting here.
So true.
Yeah.
I could not. And I am so grateful that, when I decided to start the agency, they all backed me up. So I had great letters from former agents, from, some former celebrities that I worked with on Broadway. And I said, hey, I'm going to start this agency. And a couple of them wrote me letters, that I was submitting my packet to breakdowns to be approved, and to SAG-AFTRA and to Equity. But when I was in it, I never thought for a second I would want to be an agent. It never crossed my mind. I was so focused on the onstage performing, trying to survive, trying to go job to job in that artist way. But I could not have done it without the guidance and the negotiations and the pressing of those agents at all. So I'm so grateful to now sit in the seat to help advocate for artists. Like, that is the greatest joy of my life, because I feel like when you're a performer, you have to be somewhat self-centered. You have to be waking up and vocalizing and physical therapy and, the 8 shows a week grind and the dancer grind, and you're in class and you're in ballet class and you're in tap class and you're in acting class, and you're constantly going and trying to keep your machine running. And as an agent, I just wake up and really try to go, okay, this person, they're so amazing. They're so great. I'm trying to get them into this room. I'm trying to negotiate for them. So for me, the biggest kind of takeaway from my career is now to help others. So
You mentioned having the support of your parents, and I feel like hearing that story and then growing up in the performing arts school, like, God, just like how beautiful. So it makes so much sense, right? To have the experience that you have to get where you were. What would you say to somebody that doesn't have that support right now? And maybe their parents are like, when are you going to go get a real job? What would you say to them?
And Jesse, that's such a life question, I think, too. And I think it's so tough. I think that what drives you as a human, what drives you as, an artist, and what stories you want to tell and how are you going to do that? Those are like the 4 key questions. And can you do it alone? So can you do it without your number one cheerleader, without the financial backing, with the pressure of going around, and maybe your family came from doctors, lawyers, and that's what they expect. Can you still accomplish those things and be okay and create a life where you're okay? I think that's the question to ask, because not everyone has that support. And it also could be the other way. It could be possibly a family of artists that someone's going off and saying, I want to be, an accountant. And the family's like, oh, but we're creative. You're going to, have the other side of this. So I think a couple of ways is to create your own community, to really lean into, your artist community. And because you have access now to Zoom, to everything, we can do that across the world. So if you don't have built-in friends, family, actual support, then to really kind of create it on your own and really try to start your own path. And it's hard. It's so hard. I remember being backstage with Broadway colleagues, and some of their families absolutely did not support him. And you think Broadway is the pinnacle of theater, right? And they are really trying to go through it, and they're in it. They're fully in it with their families. And at what cost does this career come to you, I think is the question.
Wow, yeah. They say that if you have, I think 10,000 hours of training, you become, a master, I guess, if you want to, say that. And I think you kind of tallied up your hours that like prior to 16, you had over 10,000. I'd love to know if you can go back to that time in your life. Do you remember like, and obviously you don't know, like this is the moment I hit 10,000 hours, right? But like around that time, like, was there a moment that it like, you felt like it became easier, that like, oh, like this quote makes sense?
That's such a great question. I don't think there was a moment. I think going into New York, and again, my parents sacrificing to bring me to the summers there, to those summer programs, starting to get scholarships there to Joffrey Ballet and the different companies, really seeing yourself there. And I don't want to say against other dancers, but at the end of the day, if you're in a room with 800 people and they're hiring one, it is that competitive fire.
For sure, yeah.
So not again, having access to social media and the internet, you don't know. You were on your own path kind of training. All I knew was that I was eating it, living it, breathing it. And so I almost feel like I had one foot out the door in high school. I tried to do what I could in high school with some of the clubs and some of the societies and things like that. But it was such a fire that burned so strongly to me. So at that 16-year-old age, I didn't feel like I was missing. And so looking back, and I'm so careful when I sign a minor client, I am asking them, are you okay if you miss your prom? Mm-hmm. Like, I missed my high school graduation. I was not there. The cast, though, rallied around me and they designed my school colors and things like that. What kind of effect is that going to have on you 30 years from now? We don't know that, right? We can't foresee.
What you did was way better.
Oh my gosh. We don't know. But I feel so protective of our minor clients, because the thing that I think is that pivotal time you were talking about is I'm an extreme personality. So the healing part of it, to kind of get that 10, 12,000 hours at the age of 16, we can look at athletes, we can look at CEOs, anyone, entrepreneurs. We can look at anyone that is that kind of intense. I think the work that you have to do is to kind of be okay and go, okay, these are your standards. So hitting Susan Stroman's show at that young age was like, for me winning the Olympics or, winning the Super Bowl. And so I think for me, I don't feel like I made it per se when I was that young. Then it became, I'm in this whole world now with people who have years of experience, years. And now I'm in just a different pool of people. So I don't really feel like I ever made it in that young age, but it was an incredible accomplishment that then led me to more relationship, that then, because you don't know if the last show you're going to do is your first show. You don't know when you're going to work again. Totally. So it was kind of that, I'm young, I'm starting out, it's a great opportunity. Where's it going to go?
What, it's so interesting, and I never would have guessed this like on this show, but I feel like something that comes up a lot is talking about transition and how you transition and why. But what I feel like is so important to like talk about is like the point that transitioning is okay. That like, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you gave up. It just means that you changed your mind, or you wanted to do something else, or you discovered that you didn't like it as much as you thought you were going to. So you want to fulfill yourself in a different way, which I think is very important and powerful. So for you, we're at the pinnacle, but at that time didn't think that you quote unquote made it, right? And then did eventually transition to being a talent agent, opening your own agency. What kind of, like, why?
Jesse, thank you. So when I was in the producers on Broadway, I don't know if you're familiar with the show.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
It has
Nathan
more Tony
Lane,
Awards.
Matthew Broderick.
Yes. It has more Tony Awards than any show in history. And I only say that to kind of set the scene. When I used to say I was in the producers, people thought I was a producer, right? Again, it's the time.
Yeah.
So just whatever that means about awards, whatever that means, it just is what it is, right? At that point, when you're in the biggest show in the history of the Tonys, do you think you've made it? Do you think you have? And so that is when I gave my notice, and I not only left the show, but I left the industry. So I called my agent and I said, I think I'm done. I really think I'm done. I really think I've had a great, run of this, and I really want to explore other avenues of life. And it was insanely scary because.
But wait, why? I feel like you're the really popular show that ends on season 4, which can be smart a lot of times, right? Instead of going until people are like, when are they going to end this thing? What? There has to be something inside that you're like, I think I'm done. Like, why?
I think it was finally just like listening to myself. And I don't think artists do enough. I don't think humans do enough, because we're trying to pay our bills. We're trying to get through the day. We're going. And really listening to what I wanted next. The other thing that I'm just so grateful for is I started so young. So this was a long time. This wasn't like, okay, you just did it and you're gone. So this was that pinnacle. And ironically, it was also Susan Stroman who gave me my first show back, in Crazy for You. I think it was just listening to go, I think I want another life. I think I would love to explore. And my thing is just with artists too, is like to stay curious. And it was very scary to leave the comfort of the connections, the comfort of
100%.
the money, the comfort
Yeah.
of health insurance, the comfort of, this is what I know that I've known since I've been 3 years old. This is what I have known for 30 years of my life. But I think when you really can sit with yourself and listen, and I really started over. Like I really went from there to there. And not a lot of people got it, and that was okay. People were like, you're leaving 15 years early. You haven't even hit anything. So yeah, it was very scary, but expansive in a way. Like it was so much growth, so much change, so much walking away from that life.
You know what's interesting too, as you're kind of talking about this, I'm like, actually so smart. And the reason is because you're doing something at such a high level. If you leave at that moment, you're leaving with such a confidence. You know what I mean? Because you're like, I'm doing this at a high level. I can go do anything at a high level. Yeah. So like, that's actually the perfect time. Do you know what I mean? Which I feel like most people would say like, what? No, absolutely not. But I'm like, actually mindset wise, you're on like a whole other planet, because you're like, well, and I'm not saying, I don't mean this in like a cocky way. You're like, look at me, but it's like, look at where I am. Yeah. If I can get here, then I can go accomplish the next thing.
Jesse, thank you. That is ended up, I think, what's happened.
Yeah.
But when I went back and I decided I want a different life, I mean, because I was on Broadway, I didn't go to undergrad. So I went in and applied to so many schools and so many dozens of schools, and started back as an older non-traditional student starting in an undergrad. And so I would be in class and other students were like waiting for me to go to the front of the room. I'm like, no, I'm a student just like you. And so to have that kind of switch of, I was young with people twice my age on Broadway, and then I was like twice the age of people in college. So it was kind of that dichotomy, but just then that grind of being a student at that age, when your friends are finding partners, maybe settling down at that point in life, maybe getting married, maybe starting to save for a big purchase, maybe having kids. I was completely starting over as a student. And so, but I was so grateful. I was so grateful to be in the classes. I was so grateful to be learning, and I was paying for every cent. I was like, this class is costing this much per minute.
Yeah.
And I think if I would have gone the opposite direction for me, I wouldn't have been able to do it, because my drive was so much wanting to be in musicals. If I would have maybe gone straight to college, who knows? We can't know in the past. But I was so in it when I was older going to school. I was so in it, and I was so just in the moment and so present.
Paige, you've worked with actors as an actor, and now you're working with them as an agent. Is there anything that you think actors should know? Or two things I want to go over. One that you think is going to help them, like as an actor, and then second, help them as an actor, but with their agent relationship.
Great. So I think as an actor, just stay curious and really keep expanding as you can. So the strife and the tough times that you're going through, use that. The exuberation and the joy, use it. Really to, not to be cliche, but to seize all parts of life, because otherwise you're not raw, you're not vulnerable. You are a robot of an actor. You're not able to, I think, stay and give the layers to a human, who we all have so many layers to us. So I think staying open. I think I love stage actors because I think getting up, if you can, getting up on stage and feeling the kind of progression of a play or the progression of a musical, getting in front of that and getting on that roller coaster that the curtain goes up and then it comes down, and then the grind of that, I think is great. I think stage actors should also try to expand and see how they feel in TV and film, and see how they feel that medium.
Do less. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And those 18-hour days where you're on set. And so I think staying curious, staying open, and expanding would be probably something I would tell actors to just enjoy the ride, because you don't know at any moment where you're going to be. If you're looking out, we can't look out. We can have goals, but if you're looking out 20 years from now, and to look back and go, gosh, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have taken this risk or tried this project. So not to throw caution to the wind, but I think to stay curious. As far as the agent-client relationship, I think it depends on the agent, depends on the client, depends on the needs. But for me, energy has to be flowing. Like energy has to be flowing. And so I think, of course, there's the belief in the artist. I believe in them just so vigorously. Like I will watch tapes and I will cry and I would just be, we're in it. Our team is just, we love storytellers. Then there's the next part of it that is, what are your expectations? Do you expect your agent texting you at 7:30 every morning? Do you expect coffee all the time with them? Do you expect 25 appointments a week? Do you expect to hit these bookings? What is the collaboration? Like, what are you bringing? What are they bringing? It is a relationship. They're all different. All of my clients have different needs from me, and I really try to meet them where they are. So if I'm working with an emerging artist, they might need a little bit more guidance. If I'm working with a veteran, they might just want my ear. They may not. It's really the psychology of knowing, and it takes time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's right away, and sometimes it's like, two fist bumping. Sometimes we just need maybe an adjustment to go, okay, this is what I was meaning here. What were you? So I think it's really, really interesting, very complex, because every artist needs something different and every agent expects something different. But I think clear communication, and when I'm interviewing an artist, I really try to lay everything out. I try to just be transparent. This is what I'm thinking. This is where I see you. And the last thing I think is alignment is so crucial. Our agency, we send out talent reports without asking, our clients asking, because alignment to me is just everything. If you're not aligned, then I feel you have nothing. So those are just a couple of points on what I feel really is are key points to the relationship.
Very cool. So I want to talk about two things, one on each point here. So the first one is the actors that are wanting to bounce between stage and film and TV. I'd love to know the ones that you've seen do that successfully, maybe a common denominator. And then the other thing is on the communication, I think you said something so key, which is expectations. And it's like, that's when you're disappointed, is when your expectations aren't met. Yeah. Simply, that's really what it comes down to. You know what I mean? And so something to help with that, is just the communication. And so I'm talking to actors here. It's like, communicate clearly. What is your expectations? If you're signing on to an agent, right? If we're just starting to work together and I'm expecting 5 series regular auditions a week, and I'm not getting it, you're working your tail off and you're like, I'm crushing it for Jesse, right? And I'm like, this is horrible. It's simply because my expectations are not being met. But if I had told you my expectations and you're like, oh, just so you know, that is not realistic. Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, what is realistic? You're like, this is what's realistic. And then you crush it. I'm like, well, this is going well. Yeah. It's simply because of expectations. So, I think when you are with an agent, make sure that you know what those expectations are. Make sure that they're realistic, So now going back, I'd love to know a common denominator that you found with actors that have been able to juggle both, Broadway or theater and film and TV, and maybe even what an actor needs to do if, they're in one and want to go to the other, and what's maybe an action item.
Great question. And I think part of it does come down to expectations, because you could be a veteran client who's done, let's say, 5 or 6 musicals on Broadway and just all of a sudden go, I'm in TV film now, here I am. And this industry owes us nothing. This industry is not going to part. The Red Sea is not going to part. And they're going to go, oh yes, we've been waiting for you to come from Broadway, and either a play or a musical. And then here you are. Like it's just owes us nothing. Yeah. So I think expectation is part of it, because it's
harsh, but so true. I just want to always do nothing,
sorry.
Right? Yeah, no, I love it.
It's the reality of it, though,
yeah,
because
it is.
I think thinking about if you've built a body of work and you've built a stacked resume with just impeccable credits and every office knows you, and you've done that for, let's say, 15 years, and you're feeling confident, you're feeling great, the logical probably part of the actor is thinking, well, I could just do this in TV and film. But I always go back to them in hopefully a kind way and say, you're emerging in this, you're emerging over here if you have nothing yet. So you have something, you have a lot, you have built this medium, you have built these connections, these relationships, you've taken risks, you have grind, you have discipline, you have the 8 shows a week, you have that. But if you don't also treat this as a craft where you need to do the same thing, that's where I think actors can be really, see a huge obstacle. But I think that too, they also need to train in that craft, practice that craft. So if it's, taping, setting yourself a goal to tape 20 tapes a month, or that might be steep, but however many it is, you have to practice that craft as well. I see the crossover that happening more between theater and stage actors to TV film than I do the opposite way. I haven't seen a lot of TV and film actors come to us and go, I should be in a Broadway musical tomorrow, because they haven't put in those 20 years of vocal, dance, and those things. I usually see, and I love theater actors with all my heart, so I'm not trying to generalize about a group of people. But I think usually swinging from the TV and film side to coming to stage, they're a little bit more open and understanding. Go, okay, I need to get back into this. I need to start doing new workshops and readings. And these are the playwrights I'm following. These are the stories I want to tell. I'm trying to get in front of these teams. I'm really trying to build this kind of body of work. On the TV and film side, I think we, need to have a understanding of what's required on this side. And some people completely do. Some people walk through both worlds. Some people they're doing a limited run on Broadway. They have a film coming up. Some people are having, their series regular, and then they step into a play. We can see it. We see so many examples on both sides. A-listers, B-listers, everybody, right? That can do that. I think it's possible, though, because at the heart of it, we're all actors. But I think you need to understand that these are 2 different mediums, similar craft, very different goals in the kind of the artistry of it. But I think that it can be done. I think you also have to understand that it could take decades. It could take so much time, because you've built yourself up in one world, and then to just expect this other world door to open can be challenging.
Hey, are you a parent of a young actor? Then you're going to want to pay attention to this, because Get Seen Studios has what we call our Rising Star program. This program is incredible. It is a monthly program that puts you in front of an industry pro every single month and focuses on what a young actor needs to be focusing on, which is auditions. So every single month we focus on either theatrical auditions or commercial auditions, so they can be set up for success when they get an agent, or if they already have an agent, to really succeed at these auditions and even begin to make money at this. So we bring in different industry pros every single month and agents and casting directors, and then work on those auditions. So if this sounds like something that you would like to get your child or a friend that has a child involved in, all you need to do is email risingstar@getseenstudios.com, and we will let you try your first month for just $1 a class. That's right, only $1 a class. All you got to do is email us, and we will get you all set up and ready to go to improve those auditions, and then also get in front of those industry pros, because we are Get Seen. Thanks for watching. You know, you mentioned earlier, you can't be in Kansas, and if you're wanting to like work and get the jobs in Atlanta or LA or New York, so you're thinking 100%, right? If you're like wanting to make that transition, either, if you're doing stage in New York, wanting to get some jobs, and you might feel like it's easier in Atlanta, like you need to get boots on the ground in Atlanta, or vice versa. If you're wanting to maybe get some, the real Broadway theater auditions, you got to get boots on the ground in New York. Do you think can we define boots on the ground, right? Like,
definitely.
Does that mean like I got to move there for a year, move there for 6 months, or it's like I got to be ready to get on a plane? What's your definition?
That's a great question. I think it varies case by case. So let's say a dancer or a rockette, let's say something like that. Dancers have the ability to get in front of most choreographers that they want to hire them in New York, or let's say LA as well. So you're going to class with them a lot. You are building that time. You're building trust in class. So that's kind of its own case. For musicals, I think you really should start getting in front of the offices so they can start to know you. Now, if you have representation, that's our job to also open those doors. So I'm kind of talking about the unrepresented person who might be living in Kansas going, what do I do? How do I get there? I would say a temporary, either a sublet, not just, give up and go. I mean, not only financial, but all the things. So if you have a connection, or you have friends, or you come in for a workshop, then to go there and just see how you actually like living there. See, does this work for me? Does Atlanta, does LA, does New York work for me? So if you're doing kind of, let's say, a 4-week or however long you sublet, then start getting out. Start trying to, in an authentic way, build relationships. Because I think really relationships, and because we can't get in the room, I came up in a very different time where we were always in the room. We were not in this virtual world. So because that is gone, that is the obstacle that I see to people maybe living in Kansas not getting into the markets, because they're emerging. I think if you have, the connections where you can get into those markets, come and try it out. Come and see if that's a fit for you. See if you can get in there. But without credits, I think preparing yourself for an agent is the way to go, because it's going to be tough, I think, to have an agent interested in you or get back to you without some credits, without some sort of momentum or something that's just so fantastic that the agent's like, wow, this person is in Kansas. I think they're amazing. And I think there's some great agents in Kansas. I don't mean to knock Kansas, but there's work there.
I don't know how many listeners in Kansas we even have.
Well, there's got to be great work there, though, that you can start working in your own market. So if you are in Nebraska, if you are in wherever you are, you can work there. There's going to be commercials. There's going to be hopefully a good acting studio there, right? You have the virtual world now of acting where you can get into on-camera classes, and you're self-taping, so that works.
Yeah.
So whatever market you're in, I think start building those credits there. And then if you're really just not finding it, you're not finding the amount of work, the greatness of work, if you will, then it's probably time to get to that market and get established. And if you decide to make a move, it's a huge life change. So I think every market is workable. If you're in North Dakota, there's got to be someone there that is working. There's got to be
North Dakota? I don't know. We're stretching. We're stretching.
Or start a theater company there.
Yeah, there you go. Well, before we get to the spotlight sign off here, I'd love to talk about, I know we were like, making up different markets here, but specifically if we're talking about like Southeast New York, which is where your agency is, you have branches in, I feel like there's probably, so there's two parts to this question. I have a lot of 2-part questions for you today. So one is going to be how do you balance it because it's totally different types of deals, all that stuff. So how do you balance it? And how are you still growing into it? But then the next thing is, can an actor truly do it? And what's your opinion on like where you're at? You know what? Because that's going to be more in depth. Let's just focus on you first. How are you balancing both markets and within the because there's obviously very different deals. You're not doing theater contracts in Atlanta. Exactly. You're probably not doing too many like major series regular deals in Atlanta as opposed to New York, right? But then there's so many more opportunities, maybe you could argue, in Atlanta than New York. So what how do you balance that?
Jesse, that's a great question. They really are two completely different markets in that way. So when we're going to negotiate, in the procedural world, it's very different because that is such an established world that it's more, who's been on the show, how many credits do you have, how many guest stars do you have, and those budgets are set and the storylines are going, and these are some of the most beloved shows in the world, right? We can look back, and I grew up watching them. My parents are still watching them. So negotiating within that world is its own art. Negotiating Atlanta is its own art. It's very, very different market. I think that the offices getting to know Resolute, getting to know kind of my taste. Now, Katie has been an agent for 11 years. She was at Bowles Winnett and came over, and our other agents. So it's the offices knowing our taste. And it's them also taking that risk when we have our veteran clients, like our series regular clients, going in and then putting in that emerging artist there and them taking a risk on that. So kind of in the sense of pitching to those two different markets. I still think we're seeing at our agency a lot of New York clients coming in to the Atlanta market, which I know is hard to hear. And my goal as an Atlanta office is to build a solid roster of amazing storytellers with integrity who live in Atlanta. They are here. I know they're here. And that is the goal, to have, if they want New York representation, for them to be able to have that, because we are so rooted in New York. So to have both of those, to have the best of those worlds, I think is really ideal, because they are very different worlds. Yeah. I think a lot of actors have goals to be on Law and Order or FBI Most Wanted or a lot of the shows that are coming out, and it is its own flow. It is its own pacing. And to be able to walk between those worlds are wonderful, without even mentioning theater, but just the film and television worlds. The great shows that are coming to Atlanta, everyone's excited about. Wonderful things happening here. And I think in 2025, I think we're all looking forward to, what does the landscape look like of the industry? What does it look like after we've come off the pandemic, after the strikes? So we're all hoping that it's just full force ahead, and that February of next year, we're going to know a little bit more with the election certainty now. Whichever way. But I think investors are going to be more certain. We're going to see where streaming's going. But it's very interesting. I love the two different markets because they are so different, to balance them out. And it's learning every day. It's really kind of, okay, this deal worked in New York. This deal did not work here.
Right,
this deal did work here. This deal's amazing in Atlanta. But then, oh my gosh, New York said absolutely not. They're very set, and they've been doing that show for how long? So I think it's adapting, being open, and just staying to go, okay, this is what's working here. Let's try it. That's the business side, right? That's the entrepreneurial side. Yes. To go, let's try it here. Let's see what works here. Let's see what works in New York. And some things are a little bit more set in New York because the market's older, I would say. And some of the offices, they have different standards of clients they want to see, resumes they want to see, just as in the world of plays or the world of classical music versus, let's say, R&B. So it's got its own nuances to each market, but it's exciting because they're both thriving.
So just like you've adapted, and you've had to, you're forced to, if you want to work in both, what do you think an actor has to do if they want to work in both? How do they have to adapt?
I think the commercial market's really strong in Atlanta. I think the film and television market's really strong. The amount of offices is smaller than the amount of offices in New York. So right. I think to adapt there is to really get great representation. That should be a goal. I think it's almost impossible to make it in film and television without a great agent. I really do.
Yeah.
I think you can absolutely, there's great work out there. You can do short films and what you need to do, and you're starting to build and you're working and maybe you're writing. But I think it's crucial to get great representation. And I think the amount of offices and how open the offices are here. is exciting. So a lot of the casting offices here have great classes, great workshops, and they're not pay to play. They are looking at clients. They're looking at possible, actors to bring in. In New York, I think it is great if you can have that theater background. Sorry to say theater again, but because casting directors in New York go to theater, they still, even in this day, they're going to off-Broadway shows. We invite our offices to see our clients and say, okay, we have a client in this Broadway show. I'd love for you to come see them.
Yeah, smart.
And so the TV offices do come, and we also invite TV and film offices that we have good relationships to openings, for Broadway openings, and they want to get out. For the most part, I think you've got that aspect if you're in that market to have them kind of come and see you and be involved a little bit more. Again, not every TV film actor has to do stage, right? That's not a requirement. But I think Atlanta, you have less targets per se. You have fewer offices.
Right.
New York, you have more offices. So I think people definitely can work in both markets. It's what's also trending right now. Those are things that actors can only stay up on as far as they can know, right? So I think that's something to know. What shows are you really drawn to? Do you really see yourself on? Because a lot of our comedy clients, we're sending them out to LA because they're right there in that world. And so I think it's a little bit more difficult to really do that in the New York market and sometimes the Atlanta market. So I think it's really knowing kind of your goals and where the industry sees you. How are you going to push through? But all markets have pros and cons.
Yeah. Well, Paige, it's been so lovely talking to you and going back and forth about these different markets and about the journey, as an artist. So I want to end strong with our spotlight sign off here. So the first question is, what's something you're super grateful for today?
Jesse, thank you so much. It's been an honor. I'm so proud of what you're doing. First of all,
thank you so much.
Advocating for artists is just amazing. Grateful for health, grateful for family, grateful for the opportunity, grateful for life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Easy, simple, but it's important that we take a moment, because we take those things for granted so often, Second thing is, what is a TV show, film, or book that changed the trajectory of your life?
That is a tough one. I think I could say something in each category, but I think watching Fred Astaire movies really, as a kid, I was just like, oh, it's that golden age musicals. And I was just in a trance and just completely, it was like a magnet. And so seeing that and seeing those, even females as well, seeing Ginger Rogers and Ann Miller and just getting that inspiration, I was blown away. I was just blown away.
I love that. So true. What is something in your daily routine that you really cherish?
Oh, wow. So I have almost 6-year-old twins who are so lovely.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And full of energy and full of life. And they're doing all the things. I'm very, very grateful. I have a partner who gets them ready for school every morning. So I have my mornings. So I work out every morning and I have like that 3 hours. He gets them ready. He takes them to school.
Good job, hubby. Good job.
Oh my gosh. That is the greatest gift. And so I can really work out and just kind of take time for myself and really center for the day and just get prepared for the day. Because one of the greatest things about being an agent is we don't know what's going to happen that day. We know there's balls in the air, there's contracts trying to close, there's people in callbacks, there's people pinned, there's people flying out for screen tests, there's this, that, and that. And so it's just to kind of regulate the nervous system before the day gets going and have some time. I'm so grateful for it.
I know this isn't it, but my favorite part of the routine is that Dad does all this. That's all the work.
It's very true.
That's great.
It's very true.
What is something that you're currently trying to improve in your life right now?
Wow, so many things. I'm doing my executive MBA right now.
Wow.
So I forgot to mention that. But being able to absorb information and regurgitate it back and test taking, that is something that I thought would come back a little bit easier.
Gosh, I hate
I'm like a
test
year and a half
taking.
in. I know.
I hate it.
I know. So it's
good for you.
It's been a long time since I've done that. So I'm trying to improve on test taking and just getting that information. My brain is not what it is. and what it was. So,
Yeah, that's
but it's
so-
exciting though.
But like you like school, right?
I do.
You know, that's the thing. We have an incredible actress who's been in the mentorship. We've been on her journey for a while. Shout out Liz Phillips. But she's also just keeps getting like different like master's degrees, and every time she tells me, I'm like, we're focusing on goals or whatever. She's like, I want to like do well in school or get straight A's or I want to pass or other. And I'm like, she's still in school. There's some people that just love school.
Love it and keep going.
I'm
and
like, I'm not going. I don't want to be in there. No way.
you don't have to. You never have to again.
I'm not doing it.
and it's interesting because I'm around people starting up software companies. I'm around CEOs. I'm around such different brains, and I get inspired by them. And I'll think, okay, wow, let me try this. As an entrepreneur, one thing that's been so, I think, challenging is I was kind of a follower for a lot of my life. I was a follower of make that director happy, be whoever's in the front of the room. I need to get hired. I need them to hire me. And so as an entrepreneur, you're on your own. You are like, okay, let me try this. Is this going to work? I don't know. Let me try this. Oh, this did not work at all. This was not, but so being in this program has really helped me be around other people at different stages of owning their businesses or whatever career path they're on. So it's been inspiring to me.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Keep at it. I love it. Well, last question is, what's something you want to make sure all the listeners receive that they really get in being here with us?
Wow. Well, you're the gift, and your podcast is the gift. Your community is the gift, because I really, truly think that artists carry a burden. I know we were talking about this earlier. We carry a thrill and a madness at the same time. We carry a lot of things that I feel are very specific to our industry. And I'm not saying that other industries don't have this, but knowing and trying to work on loving yourself, I think, is something that will really, no matter where you go, where you end up, is something to really start to heal and to start to really truly care for yourself, listen to yourself, stay curious, but really taking care of yourself, because the industry is not going to do it. Whatever industry it's not going to do it. But I think really caring for yourself is the only way forward to get to the other side, whatever that looks like. But also just to get through the day.
All right. Paige, it's been such a pleasure being here with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Jesse, thank you so much. It's been an honor. And again, so proud of everything you're building, continuing to build. It's what it's all about.
Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, if you enjoyed, make sure to hit that subscribe button or follow button right now so you never miss an episode. We want to continue to stay on your journey and help you out and give you this positive insight in a powerful way. So do that now. Thanks again for being here. Paige, thanks again.